Holiday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Holiday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Holiday. Holiday, bring it on.
Today on CityCast Houston, it took a jury only 6 hours to declare a former HISD official and vendor guilty on bribery charges. Let's go behind the scenes with Houston Chronicle's education reporter Nusaiba Mizan. It's Monday, April 28th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Okay, Nusaiba, so this was a pretty high-stakes trial with some of Houston's most prominent defense attorneys, and it lasted for a month, but the bribery scheme started with something pretty mundane. What happened? How did this all work?
Yeah, so the alleged bribery scheme is centered around lawn mowing, HISD properties and playground mulch. That's the kind of the focal point here. And it's been lasting for years, that prosecutors say. The centerpiece of the whole case by the government was this handwritten bribe ledger. Like, imagine a day planner. It's like a spiral bound day planner. That's something you could probably see in a store, and it's crammed with like monetary figures, project names, school names, and also amounts that prosecutors said were bribes.
Wow. Can you remind us of the players here? Like, who was doing this?
Yeah, so the bribe ledger was kept by the HISD vendor named Anthony Hutchison, and the co-defendant in this case is the former HISD chief operating officer, Brian Busby.
How much money are we talking about here? Because you're talking about lawn mowing and mulch. How much was it? It doesn't sound like it's much.
Yeah, well, it adds up with a lot of schools. So the prosecutors are saying that had said that HISD was overcharged $6 million for mowing schools. And then Hutchison's company charged around $800,000 for playground mulch. So we're talking about like around $7 million worth of playground mulch and mowing, according to the government's calculations.
Okay, so this guy, Anthony Hutchison, was overcharging the district. How did the chief operating officer play a role in this, Brian Busby?
So there's a couple of allegations that were going on here. One is that Brian Busby was asking for work for Hutchison, and that's where other HISD ex-officials come into play here. There were 5 HISD affiliated people who have pled guilty to conspiracy in connection to this case who came and testified in this trial. So Busby's involvement is there. He's also accused of paying the former HISD board president cash from Hutchison in a Walmart parking lot. So There are multiple accusations going on here, but those are 2 that came up and was in the trial.
Okay, you've already said some wild stuff here, and we're going to get to some more wild moments from this trial, but how did they get caught?
Yeah, so the public came to know about this in 2020. There was an FBI raid, a very high-profile FBI raid of HISD's headquarters, Hattie Mae White Educational Center. And then there was, simultaneously on the same day, there was FBI raids of Busby's home in the Cypress area, and Hutchison's home and Hutchison's office. So this became a very high-profile case in February 2020.
So you were following this trial and you were updating us on the Houston Chronicle. And as I was reading your updates, there were so many moments that stood out to me. And I think they stood out for you as well. So let's go through some of these moments that, caught everyone's eyes. You already laid out some, but give me some of your wildest moments or just moments that caught you in this trial where you're like, what?
Yeah, for sure. So I think maybe starting with that bribery ledger, one of the ways in which prosecutors tried to substantiate an alleged bribery ledger, this handwritten document, is by using other documents such as credit card payments, bank records, to place the defendants in Las Vegas in September 2017. And in the bribery ledger, there's also notation that says LV 916 that would suggest that the defendants, that a group of people were there in Las Vegas. So they were able to use credit card payments and other records to place the defendants in Las Vegas at that time. And those payments include liquor payments, a payment to a strip club, and more in order to place the defendants there.
I want to pause you on this ledger. So Anthony Hutchinson kept this very detailed ledger of payments, of accounts receivable, it sounds like, the Las Vegas payments. Did he talk about that? Like why he kept such a detailed ledger of this scheme, pretty much?
Yeah, that's actually the kind of the biggest question or mystery in this trial, because Mr. Hutchinson did not take the stand. So there's a lot of investigators and former employees who are sort of weighing in on what the document could mean. And prosecutors are saying it's a bribery ledger, but only Hutchinson knows what it really is. So this is sort of, a lot of it was trying to make connections, crosswalk the document between documents. And that was one of the reasons why this trial took so long.
Okay, you have to explain this gambling and the poker games that were involved in this trial, and were they using that as like a tax break? Like what is happening with that? Because that stood out immediately. I was like, why is there a pro poker player involved in this bribery scheme with HISD? What happened there?
Yeah, so towards like the latter half of the trial, and this is a 4-week trial, so we're talking like a lot of charges. As it pertains to tax charges, one of the allegations is that Hutchinson wrote off his gambling debts as business expenses, and then that therefore resulted in underpayment of taxes. That's what the government's arguing. But when it comes to like the gambling debts, like they brought in a pro poker player. Both sides had people take the stand who could speak to the gambling habits of Anthony Hutchinson. And using records, they showed that in order to pay off these debts, which people said that he consistently paid off his debts, he would send over checks to a Cleveland-based timber company, and then that company would cash checks, and then that cash would be used to pay off gambling debts. So there's this sort of other storyline, so to speak, of gambling and poker and cashing in checks. That probably how it relates to HISD is that there are invoices where this Cleveland-based company is said to do work for HISD. There are school names on this. There's like project types on here. There's amounts on here.
What?
But the Cleveland-based company, an employee and the person who runs the company said they never did work for HISD. So in HISD's name, or HI school's name, so to speak, there are these mocked up invoices that were used to connect gambling debts to business expenses.
Okay. This is starting to sound like an AMC show, by the way. Like, this is so detailed. This is so wild. This is like a network, it seems like, that Anthony Hutchinson created of getting away with this. And if that wasn't wild enough, you mentioned the former school board president was involved in this, and we knew this heading into the trial because she pled guilty and cooperated. What was her testimony like? What stood out there?
Yeah, so kind of background information being that like when a witness takes a stand, they tend to be very confined to like answering the question. So she was very matter of fact in answering the questions. It was a long testimony, and she said that she got paid twice, or she accepted cash twice in a Walmart parking lot from Mr. Busby and Mr. Hutchinson's cash.
In a Walmart parking lot?
In a Walmart parking lot, yeah.
Do we know which one?
It's near Tidwell and...
No way.
Yeah. She signified which part of Walmart it was. And the second payment, and I think this is sort of central to the case, she said that the second payment was a connection to specifically Holland Middle School and Pleasantville Elementary. Like there was an agreement there, and it very specifically was connected to schools. And that was central to the argument that this was bribery, or the government's argument that this is bribery, that this was for schools, that there was a quid pro quo. And so her testimony, had a large role in this case.
That is so wild. And that school board president, by the way, Rhonda Skillern Jones, That's who we're talking about here. And, this is a good moment to take a step back and talk about this bribery trial and what it says about HISD's culture, right? Obviously, this happened before the state takeover, but is it an isolated thing, or do you think it speaks to larger issues with HISD?
Yeah, I think, if you ask different people, they might, just say different things. I think one thing we could kind of think about and reflect on is how this affects community trust in HISD. HISD has seen years of different challenges, and this is one thing where where the community saw an FBI raid of HISD's headquarters, and a former official, longtime employee who has climbed through the ranks, who served HISD for a long time, face huge accusations. And so I think one thing to reflect on is how this will affect community trust in HISD and how the community is grappling with things that happened years ago before COVID, really, and that continue to this day, and affects how a longtime Houstonian, a longtime community member might see the district.
And by the way, not only faced accusations, but was found guilty by a jury. Do we know what happens next?
So next there'll be a sentencing, and that'll be in July. So the federal judge for this case will decide the sentencing. The jury had decided whether they're guilty or not. So that's where that goes.
All right. So we'll stay tuned and see what happens in July. But what a trial, and just wild, wild stuff there, Nusaiba. The Texas coast is special to me, and it's always calling me. My family has made countless memories there, and just off the Texas coast sits a unique beach town marked with salty vibes and sun-soaked memories, Port Aransas. It's a place where family traditions naturally unfold, and you'll find beauty in the island views while taking time to relax between adventures. And with 18 miles of shoreline, there are plenty of adventures, from kayaking with the kids to fishing off the coast or simply cruising down the beach in a golf cart, soaking in the sounds of the Texas coast. That sounds wonderful. Start planning your getaway now with your friends and family, because there's nothing like having multiple generations under one roof so everyone can enjoy those perfect beachfront mornings and that cool Gulf breeze in the evening. So many Texans have anchored their traditions to the island life in Port Aransas, and with one visit, you'll see why. Start your new favorite family tradition in Port Aransas, Texas. Plan your visit to Houston's beach at visitportaransas.com. I can feel it. Mother's Day's around the corner and you're scrambling to find that perfect gift. Well, stop panicking and head to auraframes.com, because the Aura digital frame is an awesome present that mom will love, and it's so easy to set up. Seriously, my mom had it set up in 3 easy steps. I love the Aura frame because my siblings and I can add pictures from wherever we are directly to our mom's Aura frame. Like those priceless photos from our childhood, to those embarrassing moments that we don't want to post on social media, but want to give mom a good laugh. And Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. For a limited time, listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off plus free shipping on their best-selling Carver matte frame. That's auraframes.com, promo code CityCast. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. All right, since I have you here, Nusaiba, I want to go through some HISD stories and kind of learn a little bit more about them. You've been so busy covering HISD lately. Let's look ahead to next school year and HISD's budget, because HISD right now is bracing to lose almost 7,000 students next year. How badly is this going to impact the budget?
Yeah, they are proceeding very carefully about budget estimates and planning. The schools haven't yet even submitted their budgets. That's going to happen within the next week. So they're waiting really to see what the legislature does, how that might help bolster their plans right now. The district having to plan around both enrollment declines and this what if with the legislature is really affecting how budgeting is and how firm budgeting is at this point. I think we're going to have to wait to see some more firm numbers and where this money is going to go in the next couple of months.
Can you remind us why enrollment is so tied to budget?
Yeah, well, from the district standpoint, that's, they're going to put dollars to where students are. But from the state standpoint, average daily attendance determines how much money comes into the district. And so, number of students, attendance, those are some factors that are tied to funding.
So it seems like cuts are coming not only to schools, but also to staff. Let's focus on the schools first. Any preliminary numbers or anything you're hearing right now, like just how badly the school budgets are going to be impacted?
This might have to be a wait and see thing, only because there is some discussion about having increased per student funding if the state gives more money,
Yeah.
but at the same time, the schools haven't really submitted their budgets yet. It's coming on April 28th. And so that has yet to be seen. But on the staff side, as you mentioned, there are going to be central office cuts again. And they will also have to match staffing with number of students, because if the number of students is shrinking, then you probably don't need as much staff.
Yeah.
And so we saw from last school year to this school year, fewer teachers, and it's possible that there will be even fewer teachers next school year because there's fewer students.
Let's talk about the new education system, which is, Superintendent Mike Miles's special program, and it has received more funding than other schools. Is that still going to be the case with this budget cut? Like, any word on the NES schools?
Yeah, I think that's on the horizon. As of the budget workshop that recently occurred, the district is looking at staffing levels. They have essentially teacher and teacher adjacent positions called learning coaches and apprentices. And so they're looking at staffing levels for NES schools. They're still in the process of planning for things, but there's no sign that's saying that they're going to pivot widely from their funding approach, which is to put more money towards NES schools. The argument being that these are higher need schools with high concentrations of low-income students who need that support. And so that's the rationale for that, according to the district.
All right. There was another lawsuit that's been in the news with a former principal suing the district. What's going on there?
Yeah, so Harrod Elementary School's former principal, Dr. Jessica Berry, filed a lawsuit in March. And there's several things in that lawsuit. Intentional infliction of emotional distress being one thing, violations of the Whistleblower Act and Department of Education whistleblower protections being another thing, violations of state labor law. So she has a lot of allegations and a sort of timeline of her correspondence and interactions with HISD as it pertains to her employment. The thing that really started this off was that in the end of last school year, several principals, including Dr. Berry, were told to resign or face termination by the board. Dr. Berry wouldn't sign anything, wouldn't agree to resignation. And so this sort of kicked off this process of the board considering termination and this conversation regarding settlement that she's saying in her lawsuit that the district is offering her, and it's in quotation marks, offering her 3 months of pay, but she's saying she's entitled to that through her contract anyways. And so that's not really, she's supposed to be receiving that according to the lawsuit. So there's a lot of conversations here about settlement and violations of law here.
What is she looking for out of this lawsuit?
She, in the listed requests or request for relief, there's $3 million listed there. There's also the request for the termination of Superintendent Mike Miles and the termination of the appointed board of managers.
What does this say about HISD's situation and, of course, the state takeover as well?
Yeah, I think it is indicative of some of the experiences and sentiments that are happening from former employees who are being asked to resign or who are facing termination or non-renewal. There's a lot of employees at this point who have faced this similar route to separating from the district or termination. And I think we have yet to see what this means in terms of how this proceeds, but I think this will be meaningful to a lot of people who have also faced termination from the district or separation from the district and have described or alleged work culture issues or something similar thereon.
Gotcha. So there's a chance we could see more lawsuits like this if this one goes in the favor of Dr. Berry.
Or the outcome really mean in terms of, actions to take regarding that, yes.
Okay. Another story that I was curious about, and correct me if I'm wrong, okay? I'm just going to summarize it and you tell me like, no, you missed this part, or yeah, that's actually it. So right now, HISD is in a period where they are renewing contracts for next year with teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was an error that led to some teachers not even getting that contract renewal talk going. And now HISD saying, actually, that error means that we do want you back. So let's talk about renewals. What is happening here? Did I kind of sum it up correctly? Did I miss anything there?
Yeah. So like that's kind of basically it. So that like during this time in the springtime, the district looks at not renewing contracts. So it's like not renewing your contract for next year. Consider it termination or firing, maybe just for the sake of conversation here. And they'll look at not renewing contracts and firings. And what happened was there's a certain percentage or a certain amount of people who the district was seeking to not renew, such as people who are at the lowest tier of their evaluation system, who received unsatisfactory, or who did not meet professionalism standards in their evaluation system. The district paused conversations for non-renewal and had to walk back non-renewal for around 60 employees. So initially, what was relayed to me was that there was a calculation error in their workbook for two components of their evaluation, and they're called spot observations, which is, think of it as sort of like a very brief classroom observation,
Okay.
how the teacher is teaching. And then about a day later, the district commented that they had ran through these classroom observation components again, through their calculations again, and came up with a shorter list of teachers that they're seeking to non-renew. So there are about 60 teachers who thought they were non-renewed, that they're not coming back, that they're fired. And then the district went back and let them know that they can return for the next year.
Okay, so what you just said, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason they weren't renewed was because of quote unquote performance issues, right? Or what they thought was performance issues, and there were errors. But isn't the district moving towards a performance-based pay model soon? And now you've got these issues being made. So what happens when it gets into that model? Like, are teachers panicking? Like, you can't make that kind of mistake.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well in terms of like when it comes to performance tied compensation, which is what the district's going to do. They're going to go towards paying based on how well you do in evaluation ratings. But I think this non-renewal process has left a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouths about how the district evaluates and what the outcomes of that evaluation is. So there's definitely going to have to be more trust building in regard to that before the district moves to a performance tied compensation system.
Yeah. Speaking of trust, all of these stories we just talked about, what do you think all of this says about trust with HISD?
It's an uphill battle. I think there's a lot of the district's an embattled district. It's facing a lot. And so it's a continuous journey to maintain and keep community trust when it comes to how employees are feeling or how former employees are feeling when it comes to this huge bribery scheme that occurred for years prior to COVID. And so we have yet to see what this really means, but there's a lot of reasons why community members are cautious right now with HISD.
Wow. Nusaiba, thank you so much for joining us. That was a lot of information, some wild, some interesting, and overall, HISD, it's the same word, trust. We keep coming back to it. So we'll see what happens here in the upcoming months. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
That was Nusaiba Mizan. Check out her stories in our show notes. Before we go, help me grow the show. Share this episode with 3 of your friends who have kids in HISD or who went to HISD themselves. Also, drop us a rating and review wherever you're listening, and please subscribe to the podcast so you can get daily episodes in your feed every morning. Speaking of subscribing, check out our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, for more news, events, moments of joy, and more. I've dropped a link to subscribe in our show notes. Thanks. That will do it for today. I'm Raheel Ramzanali. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new.